The Atlanta Story is a podcast highlighting Atlanta's most interesting creators, entrepreneurs, and builders. I'm JC Cadet with Atlanta Ventures and co-producer alongside Jon Birdsong. In today's episode, Jon sits down with Kelvin Collins, VP of Economic Development of the BeltLine. Born and raised in Grenada, Kevin moved to the United States for college and since has spent the majority of his career in the public sector, mainly in New York City. Before getting the call to move to Atlanta, Kelvin worked for the Small Business Services Department, a major nonprofit, as well as in the Bloomberg Administration. Just over 2 years ago, Kelvin decided to relocate his family to Atlanta and join the generational project we all know as the BeltLine. In today's interview, we learn about the current state and future decisions of the BeltLine, what factors are considered in the final stretch of the BeltLine completion set for 2030, and much more. We hope you enjoy the show and subscribe to The Atlanta Story.
Mr. Kelvin Collins, thank you so much for joining the Atlanta Story podcast. Excited to have you on today.
Well, thank you so much, Jon, for having us. Happy to share the BeltLine story.
Yes, there's been so much of the BeltLine story, starting with years ago of really the Ryan Gravel and that origination. We've had Shirley Franklin on the podcast, who I know she was a force to make sure that this idea came to fruition. And here we are nearly 15 years later, right in the thick of it with, from what I've read, 2030, the BeltLine will be completed and there's a lot of exciting things going on. And so I'm excited to dive in. Before we do, would love to learn, you're a new Atlanta transplant, right? So you spent how many years in New York City?
Yeah, just about 15 years in New York City.
Okay.
But got to New York via Texas. As you can hear, an accent. I'm originally from beautiful Caribbean island in Grenada.
Okay.
And, so if it's not on your list of places to visit, I strongly encourage you make a trip there. But made my way to the U.S. Via Texas, went to a small school in Texas. And, did business there, studied business. And then I decided, let's launch my career in the Big Apple. So I transitioned to New York City, and that's kind of where I got started in economic development, and it's been a fascinating journey ever since.
Yeah, so I saw that you spent some time in Harlem. You spent some time with the New York City Small Businesses Association. Walk us through some of those decisions.
Yeah, so, coming to the U.S. was interesting to me, right? And I'll sort of take you back even further, Jon.
Sure.
I think growing up in Grenada, my grandmother would wake me up early on a Saturday morning as we would go to the garden and she would, get green bananas and get yams and take it to the market the day after that, right? And so, and she would wake me up with her every Saturday morning. And so it was that sort of determination and commitment to helping and serving that has really sort of forged my commitment to servicehood, right?
Sure.
But it was only when I got to the U.S. I recognized that what my grandmother did by going to the garden, getting her ground vegetables and selling it in the market, that was entrepreneurship. Right? She was actually creating opportunities for us as her grandkids. But in the U.S., that's supported and that's encouraged and that's fostered, right? But back home, it was just a way of life.
Right.
And that really inspired me as I got to the U.S. and got to New York and saw that, there was so much support for encouraging entrepreneurship. I said, that's kind of what got me alive. And I think back to my grandmother who didn't have that sort of help. I said, I gotta dive in. And I was inspired from that day on. And so my career sort of took off at the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce back in Brooklyn, New York City. And, from there, I helped scaled with the New York City Business Solutions Office, which is still vibrant today. It's a system of over 16 centers that are supporting entrepreneurship, access to capital and resources for small businesses. And so just a real commitment to entrepreneurship, to community, to servicehood that has really sort of gotten my career started in New York City, and I remain committed to giving back and serving the community ever since. And so moved on to New York City government, served there as well.
So from Texas, was it just New York is the place?
So interestingly enough, I had some family there.
Okay.
And you know, you sort of ask yourself, well, after school, where do you want to land, right? But I promise you, if you get a chance to be in New York after your college career and you can navigate the world of New York City, then it gives you confidence, right?
Sure.
to make it anyway. So so New York was the destination since I had some family member there, and so it really gave me a landing spot. And sort of, you know, the rest is history. I really remain committed to community development.
And so the small business, and then was it Harlem? Talk to us about that program.
So just before I got to Harlem, I worked within the Bloomberg Administration.
Okay.
As an assistant commissioner.
So
and
this
then
was 2008?
Exactly. 2008. Transformational leadership in New York City at the time.
Yes.
Very data-driven, focused on results.
I've read his books.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was just a tremendous level of experience to be with a team that was focused on delivering for the city at a very challenging time, right?
Through the Great Recession.
The Great Recession.
Post 9/11.
Exactly, coming out of 9/11 into the Great Recession. So you really needed leadership. It mattered significantly for New York City at that time. So I had an opportunity to be among just some great leaders and great colleagues during that time.
What'd you learn from Mayor Bloomberg?
Yeah, data. Yeah, you use data to drive decision making. It was simple. Every aspect of government needed to be able to make decisions based on data. And that is a core component of how I sort of, you know, do my work today.
Yeah.
And clearly as a businessman yourself, you know, clearly you understand the value of data. So I think that was critical. And then I transitioned over to the from the Bloomberg administration to the de Blasio administration.
Okay.
I continued there. Again, really anchored in community development and serving and scaling solutions to help local small businesses tap into the entrepreneurial energy in New York City. And that was a fascinating experience. And then I got a call to lead an organization in Harlem.
Okay.
And so, you know, not often you get a call and say, hey, would you want to take over a small nonprofit in Harlem? And it was a perfect career opportunity for me. It was positioned in a place that was going through tremendous transformation and change. And you have a nonprofit that had real estate in the community. They had an opportunity to be significantly impactful with programming. And I stepped into that role and we built out many programs that are today still existing.
Wonderful. And then there was one more before the call to the BeltLine and moving everybody south.
Yeah, absolutely. So after Harlem, I got another call, and that was to be the chief MWBE officer with the nation's largest school district, Department of Education, and that we intended to build out a strategy to help connect minority and local small businesses to contracting opportunities with Department of Education. So again, really consistent with what I'm passionate about, what I'm excited about. And so you look at from Brooklyn to the city of New York, to Harlem, and then back to the Department of Education. It was all about servanthood and ensuring that we give access to people who sometimes don't easily have access to resources and opportunities.
And so when the opportunity to relocate the family to Atlanta for the BeltLine, what was the hook? What was the kernel of okay, this aligns with me personally and my mission?
Yeah. So, happy wife, happy life. So my wife said, I've had enough snow.
Yes.
And so it was, where to?
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Atlanta checked so many boxes for us. Location, the weather, and there's something special about Atlanta. There's an energy. There's an entrepreneurial spirit. There's a vibrancy. It's a city life, but it's also small neighborhoods.
Yes.
That is very unique and distinct. And what better way to do community work than the birthplace of the civil rights movement, right? There's a tradition of resiliency that made it quite easy for us to say, let's focus on Atlanta. So that was a very easy. And my wife said yes, and we made the move.
So let's talk about your position now, VP of Economic Development at the BeltLine. And a lot of things are going on. We're going to get to the drive-thrus because I know that's up for, so prepare yourself. But the BeltLine is a transformative, I wouldn't even call it a project because it's even bigger than that. But a moment, a 20-year moment in the city of Atlanta. And how does the BeltLine become a transformative movement for all of Atlanta?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's more than a project, as you said. It's a movement. It's a moment in time, and so we believe that we are building the most spectacular outdoor space for the city of Atlanta. We believe that repurposing 22 miles of unused, abandoned railroads to connect 45 neighborhoods that have historically been disconnected is transformation at its best. Whether or not you're someone looking to walk your dog or bike or run after work, or you're looking for a quality place to live, or may even be a fitness class. I mean, you name it, the BeltLine is bringing the city of Atlanta together. And we call the BeltLine the People's Project, right? Yes. And so there's a little bit of everything for almost everyone in the city of Atlanta.
What are some of the most exciting parts of, the different pillars that your role encompasses? I know I imagine it's got to be anything from real estate to technology to commerce. Which ones kind of pull the heartstrings?
Yeah, I'll tell you jobs. This project is about job creation at its very core. It's about how do we use the project to bring economic opportunity and job opportunity for the people of Atlanta at its very core.
Sure.
Now, there are a lot of ways to go about doing that.
Yeah, let's walk through those.
Yeah, and so I'll tell you, there are a couple of cool things happening right now. The first is you may or may not know that we have laid 16 miles of dark fiber underneath the BeltLine. So wherever we lay trail, we are laying dark fiber.
Okay.
And so this is an opportunity for us to, reduce broadband connectivity cost. Right? It's for us to sort of make public Wi-Fi available. It's an opportunity for us to really think, what does technology look like on the BeltLine for BeltLine users, for companies that are looking to relocate into the BeltLine corridor, for internet service providers. So we are really sort of thinking about the future with this technology commitment. And so now we are going to be working with a consultant to really think about technology solutions to really enhance the BeltLine user experience, but also to solve some of the urban issues that exist in and around the city of Atlanta. So that's one of the most exciting.
The dark fiber.
And what it means for the future sustainability of the BeltLine. That we believe there's a technology story there.
And is that coming in from Google? Is that coming in from AT&T? Where's it?
So it's dark fiber, and we laid the dark fiber. Okay. So it's BeltLine owned. And so we are making that available for companies that are interested in bringing connectivity into the BeltLine. Okay. So if you're a Facebook or you're a ISP provider and you're looking to connect with small businesses or BeltLine residents, you would contact the BeltLine and we will talk about a potential partnership of leveraging lateral
that infrastructure.
Exactly. So that's huge for us.
That's really nice. 22 miles within within a major metropolitan city.
Absolutely.
That's helpful.
We think we're only scratching the surface of what's possible here. In fact, a good friend of mine say we're dancing with the infinite, right?
Sure.
When it comes to technology. I mean, you know yourself, what's possible with technology just from the work you've done. So we're in the early stages of sort of shaping that, but the foundation is laid. And that is one of the most exciting projects currently within the Atlanta BeltLine.
And
but there's
16 miles of it has already been laid?
16 miles laid.
Wow.
We have a number of users on the dark fiber already. We just had our first ISP provider, and now we're looking to sort of map out a more comprehensive technology strategy. Mm-hmm. It's about digital inclusion. It's about smart city solutions. And we believe it's going to really set the stage for how do we infuse technology on the BeltLine as a use case and then potentially scale that to other parts of the city of Atlanta.
So let's talk about the digital inclusion. What does that mean?
Yeah, so it means access. Are there parts of the BeltLine in the South and Southwest that do not have connectivity to broadband, right? Are there schools, are there students in and around the BeltLine? Are there users that are currently paying an exorbitant cost for accessing broadband connectivity? Can the BeltLine play a role there, right? If you're a BeltLine user and you're on the BeltLine, are you having a difficult time finding, the next cool experience on the BeltLine? Well, maybe we can have some kiosk in critical areas that can help you navigate and get around the BeltLine.
I saw the one kiosk on 10th and Piedmont, or 10th and Monroe.
So that's close to the BeltLine.
That's
not one of ours as yet. Ours are going to be going in hopefully in the fall. But there are other initiatives that are bringing kiosk and Wi-Fi for the city.
Yep.
But we're going to be laying around the BeltLine for the BeltLine users and BeltLine user experience in the coming months.
Beautiful. And the Southwest, I saw is started May of this year and then is going to be finished in March of 2025.
Exactly. That to us is a huge part of the development that's going to happen within that part of the BeltLine. To be able to connect
Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. To be able to connect Pittsburgh to the East Side Trail, we think that's transformative. We kind of call it a smiley face.
Yeah.
We're sort of connecting that smiley face at the bottom of the trail. But right now, John, there are students that are, attending the Carver High School that are using the BeltLine as a safe way to get to and from school, right? So that right there, you have enough reason to make that a huge priority for us. So we're excited about that segment.
This podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. Check out our website to access many resources, including free tools and guides to start a business, a calendar of our upcoming events hosted at Atlanta Tech Village, and a lot more content around building companies. Random tangent question, but how does the BeltLine organization prioritize? Do y'all have your weekly meeting and say, hey, this is where we want to spend a lot of mental energy this week?
Yeah.
It's on the Southwest side, and then we'll go to the Northwest side, and then we'll go to the North side.
Yeah, I got to tell you, though, I have the privilege of working alongside some amazing professionals in our design and construction team, and led by Kim Wilson, who is the VP of Design and Construction. And she has a phenomenal team. They have mapped out schedule, budgets, they have a team together. But one important thing I would like to share on sort of how we go about prioritizing this, John. Community matters to us, and this is the people's project. So in every decision that we make within ABI and the BeltLine project, we uplift community voices. So the decision, for example, to prioritize the Southside Trail, that was direct community input. We knew we had to listen to the community and say, this is a part of the trail that needs to be opened up immediately.
Right.
And so a lot of the decisions, in fact, my boss always say, we don't chew gum without talking to the community, right? And so there's a real commitment to delivering the project by 2030, but on the way to delivering the project, listen intently to what the community is saying and how we go about making those decisions. And our design and construction team is intently listening. We have a community engagement team that's probably one of our larger teams. So a lot of the prioritization is about community.
So let's talk about one of the strongest pillars or priorities, affordable housing. How does the BeltLine view that, and how do they make it affordable and accentuate it?
Yeah, that's a huge priority for us. It's one of our redevelopment goals. And we had a slow start, several years ago. With new leadership and renewed focus and additional funding, we are pressing aggressively towards achieving the goal of 5,600 affordable units within the BeltLine TAD. We are halfway there. We're at 56% of achieving that. But I'll tell you.
And that's built, or that's
built and
being constructed?
Yeah, built and available. Funded, built, and some of them are under construction, of course. But I'll tell you, one of the decisions that was made maybe about 2-3 years ago was this idea of acquiring land. Mm-hmm. That is huge to allowing us to control the development process and to ensuring that we preserve community and we preserve affordability. And so currently the BeltLine owns just over 70 acres of land in and around the BeltLine.
Not the city.
Well, the BeltLine on behalf of the city.
Okay,
absolutely. So we're the agents of the city.
Got it.
And so having that level of land holdings really allow us to listen to the community, what the needs are, what's missing, and deliver affordability to the community.
And you said 70 acres? Wow.
Absolutely. 70 acres. And that was accumulated, I would say, over the last 6 years or so. We probably had 20 acres way before. But over the last 3 years, we've aggressively advanced that strategy. And that is going to be so critical, not just before we construct the trail, even beyond, because we're looking at permanent affordability along the BeltLine. When you own the land, John, you get to decide the level of affordability that gets into a development project. And that to us is an answer that it's taken a long time for us to get there, but we are building tremendous momentum, and we're confident that we're going to exceed the 5,600 units of affordable housing, which is part of our goal.
And so you've got housing, you've also got commerce. Commerce is a big piece, back to entrepreneurial passion. How do you view the commerce perspective? Clearly, Ponce City Market was one of the big flags in the ground, no pun intended with the flag there. And that set a strong tone. What's the future?
Yeah. The future is local for us.
Okay.
The future is tapping into the local entrepreneurial spirit within the Atlanta market and to bring them into the BeltLine economy. There's just the BeltLine is a destination. I'll give you an example. Last summer, we launched BeltLine Marketplace, where we used shipping containers to transform them into retail locations along the BeltLine.
Yep.
We opened the application and we had 6 retail spots within those containers. We had over 240 applicants apply for those 6 spots. Obviously, we only selected 6 of those, but it tells you that we can't build them fast enough, right? So the BeltLine has clearly tapped into a need.
And where were those?
We have 3 of those businesses are now located on the Freedom Parkway, which is on the East Side Trail. Another 3 is bringing services over on the West Side Trail. Services that weren't there and filling a community need. So that's kind of part of our equity strategy, right? Yeah. How do we bring services to places around the BeltLine that doesn't have services?
Kelvin, you said an interesting concept, the BeltLine economy. What is that? And I think I know what it is, but can you elaborate in just terms of how many people are going there?
Yeah.
Because my brother has a pizza shop on the BeltLine, and he's got one in Decatur. and the one on the BeltLine is it's much more fluid in terms of people coming in, coming out, and like to me, that's the BeltLine economy. But you tell me.
Yeah, it's a magnet. The
Yes.
BeltLine is a magnet in the
Yes.
city for commerce, for development, for activity, and so there are a couple of dimensions we can look at commerce, right? So the first is the development pattern. The city of Atlanta has traditionally had a development pattern along the Peachtree Spine. That is traditionally, you look at Atlanta, that's where most of the development's happening. What has happened over the last, 5 to 10 years is that the BeltLine has created a new submarket that is now encircling Atlanta. So from a development and a density perspective, that's a new component of the city's economy. That's the BeltLine economy. We have to date attracted upwards of $8 billion of private sector investment in and around the BeltLine. That's housing project, commercial development projects in and around the BeltLine. So that's one dimension to look at it. The BeltLine also sees, on average, upwards of 2+ million visitors annually around the BeltLine. Now, you tell me, if you're a small business, you want part of that, right?
Yeah.
You want to
For
get
sure.
into to that. So the idea of having a retail location on the BeltLine could be game changing for a lot of small businesses.
Yes. Is there a quota, or maybe not a quota, but is there a percentage that y'all want for the BeltLine as a whole versus residential versus commercial?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you what we're working on. What we want to see is commercial affordable spaces along the BeltLine. And so we are really beginning to lead the conversation on what exactly does that look like? What's the appropriate level of commercial space that satisfies the growing density, the growing need of people that are living along the BeltLine? And so we are going to lead this effort to figure out exactly what that mix look like. What does affordability looks like? What is the mixture based on the east side, on the west side trail? So we are really setting the tone for how do we invest in commercial affordable spaces for small businesses along the BeltLine. So that mix of residence and commercial spaces will be determined as part of that commercial strategy that we're getting on the way.
So Kelvin, as a seasoned New Yorker, how does one make the transition to Atlanta?
Yeah, that's a great question.
And real quick, did you pick up any sports allegiances during your time in New York? You must have, right? I mean, hanging out with the mayor.
Yeah. Well, listen, the Georgia Bulldogs is a story on its own, right? And you gotta admire, a football team that have leadership and passion and drive and just to be able to deliver that, consistency year over year, that sort of back-to-back championship.
Two in a row. We'll see. See if we can do it 3.
I got to tell you, let's go for it, right? Let's go for it. Now, it matters the company that you work for. And I got to give hats off to the Atlanta BeltLine leadership and the way, I was welcomed into the organization.
Sure.
And just ensuring that, all of, my family and my understanding of the lay of the land. So that transition was much easier than I had expected. Introductions to key individuals made the whole understanding of what makes Atlanta special when you get here. I think it was much easier, much smoother than I anticipated.
Yeah.
But I lived in other cities. I lived in Texas. I lived in New York, and so transition. And I think I was more concerned for my family.
Sure.
But they're fine, and the BeltLine really helped figure that out for us.
What are some areas, now that you've been here for 2.5 years, where Atlanta what are we missing, right? Besides some more winning sports teams, we got the Braves.
Yeah.
But what is there anything that is glaringly obvious?
Yeah, I'll tell you, and it may not be glaring to many, but when you talk with small businesses, you talk to people along the BeltLine, it's interestingly enough, there are pockets, along the BeltLine that probably, and in the city as a whole, that's missing a grocery store. that's missing a healthcare center, right? That's missing a dine-in restaurant. Now you have all of that in Atlanta,
Right.
but there's still pockets that are missing, and that's why I say to you that our economic development approach has to be local.
Yes.
We have to be able to sort of bring what's working on the east side to the west side, right? How do we sort of build around that Lee and White development? How do we build around the Echo Street development? How do we ensure that local businesses have an opportunity to sort of bring their services in and around communities that have long been disinvested in? So it's really about driving local sort of energy towards pockets of areas that haven't been invested in for a significant long time. That, to me, is a critical focus of ours in terms of what's missing, what else do we need to infuse. Big picture, I think we want to tap into the technology talent and that exists, and even look at life science as a sector for development. There's a huge places like New York City and Boston. They've sort of been leading the way, but I think that's a huge opportunity for Atlanta, given the talent that exists,
Yes.
the universities that exist, the Fortune 500 companies that exist. I think we're at the early stages of that, but that's a huge sector that could be developed and and Atlanta can lead the way, given how we're positioned from the talent pool perspective.
Yeah. It's back to your first point. It's fascinating because the BeltLine it's only 22 miles, which is not, it's a lot, but it's not. And so how do you really create those, the connective tissue in a way that's authentic? And it seems like y'all are doing it in a pretty meaningful way.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, one of the aspects of our work is about commercial districts. And how do we, whether or not you're on the West End or you're in Little Five Points or you're on the East Side Trail, there are commercial districts that are vibrant, that are great places
Right.
to shop. And how do we sort of make sure that we connect users of the BeltLine into some of those communities, right? So it's about physically connecting the community with the trail, but also putting programs in place to make sure that happen. A year ago, we put a comprehensive economic development framework in place. That is about jobs. It's about commercial district support. It's about commercial affordability. It's about digital inclusion, right? And all of those aspects are what's going to make the BeltLine work for the entire community. It's not one solution.
Right.
It's about finishing the trail, but it's about ensuring that the residents in and around the BeltLine have programs and services that they can say, you know what, I saw the BeltLine got built, and now I have a job that I can use the BeltLine to
Yes.
get to, right? Or, my family and friends, when they come in town, we can actually go for a stroll and walk over to a restaurant and have a great meal. And after, we can go over and have some cool entertainment. It's really about the quality of life, John. And that's what we're transforming here.
This morning, I was driving the kids to daycare and down Monroe, and I see this father and son as they are crossing the street at the crosswalk, but he's on a scooter, and the son had to be maybe 4, and he's just going through the park, and he's going to go drop the kid off somewhere, but go through the park, hit up the BeltLine, and I was like, that's a pretty back to the quality of life moment. I was like, maybe I should do that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And listen, the city of Atlanta is growing exponentially. The metropolitan Atlanta is growing. I think it's projected by Atlanta Regional Commission that by 2050, the region will see an additional 2.9 million residents, right? It's going to require projects like the BeltLine.
Yes.
And in fact, it is projects like the BeltLine that lures in, folks from all over the country, right? Not just to visit, but to live. But you need to have amenities like the BeltLine to make Atlanta that global beacon, right,
Yeah.
for sustainable life. And so we're part of the history of Atlanta, essentially.
No doubt. Let's talk a little bit more about the infrastructure in terms of light rail and also biking. Which one do you want to take first?
Light rail.
So let's talk about light rail. I'm not well versed on where we are with it, what the vision is. Can you give us a quick snapshot of where we are today with it?
Yeah, a few quick points. Transit on the BeltLine continues to be a core part of what's going to needed to happen for the BeltLine. It's a part of the vision. We have to deliver transit on the BeltLine. And right now we are engaged with MARTA, City of Atlanta, to make sure that that becomes a reality. MARTA is leading the conversation on that and doing the work on that. A quick update is that MARTA has selected a vendor to do the final design work on streetcar extension. So there's been momentum on that. There's been tremendous progress there. But the BeltLine continues to believe that transit is necessary. It increases mobility, it increases affordability, and it's a part of the core vision of what makes the project special. It's about that connectivity with transit. So we expect that will continue to be even after the trail has been completed at 2030.
Right. And so the natural evolution would be kind of from the Edgewood area where there's already light rail.
Exactly. And the streetcar extension, that's going to continue on. And what we find, John, is that it's not that people are against transit on the BeltLine. I think the question is what type of transit and how might it impact the existing user experience? What would it look like? How safe would it be? I think those are the real question that needs to be answered. And we believe that MARTA, the city and the design team are up to that challenge. And we remain committed to making sure that the BeltLine user experience remains a core part of the discussion and decision making.
So let's talk about the biking perspective, right? Because you can bike around the BeltLine, and in some areas it's amazing. In other areas, very tight.
Yeah.
Right. How do y'all view biking?
Yeah. It's part of the BeltLine experience. But I'll tell you what's going to happen, right? When we connect the South Side Trail to the East Side Trail, a lot of that's going to even out. Right. It's so easy to bike on the West Side Trail. It's quiet. It's less crowded. So it's almost like the East Side Trail is a good problem to have, right? The density, the sort of crowdedness. But once we connect the East and the South Side Trail, we're going to see that the foot traffic is going to even out. And you're going to see that, biking along the BeltLine will become much easier. That's what we anticipate happening.
And even kind of north of Piedmont Park, right? Do you see there being more commerce in some of the existing residential places, right? So north of Piedmont Park, over Buford Connector towards Otley, right? Because Otley is perfect to have a commercial, but then there's also, a 2-mile stretch there of kind of wooded areas.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing. I think we've only scratched the surface. Once the BeltLine goes in, there's so many activity from a land use and real estate development deals that are happening that hasn't bubbled up to the surface. But now that we can safely say that the entire 22 miles alignment has been established, and we're convinced that the funding is in place to complete the trail, you're going to begin to see a lot of those infill developments happening over the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, the BeltLine is a catalyst for those types of developments. So, I say, look out in the next 5 to 10 years and you'll see exactly what existed as just dirt will soon be commercial activity and development projects across the entire BeltLine.
I wonder if the ITP, OTP will get even tighter or be ITB, OTB inside the BeltLine, outside the BeltLine. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think that's why transit is so important. We really need to figure out how to move people because the BeltLine is such a destination. So we need transit to be able to help facilitate the movement in and out of the commercial activities along the BeltLine.
Yeah. Well, Kelvin, we always like to wrap up on the interview of the Atlanta story why Atlanta and what has Atlanta done for you. I understand why Atlanta, right? To be part of this transformative movement occurring, manifested through the BeltLine. But would love to learn what Atlanta has done for you in the short time.
Absolutely. Atlanta is a special place. As I said, it's a beautiful, growing city of neighborhoods. But I'll tell you one thing, John, that when the history books are written, the creation and completion of the BeltLine will go down as one of the most significant moments in the city of Atlanta, and how it has shaped the city and how it has shaped the people. And to be a part of that as part of your career, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And so we are charging ahead over the next 2 years. 80% of the BeltLine Trail would either have been completed and open to the public or under construction. And so we look forward to having you with us, in the next several years as we complete the trail and really bring the BeltLine project to the people. So pretty excited about that.
Kelvin, thank you so much for your time and being on the Atlanta Story podcast.
Pleasure being here.
This podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. It was co-produced by JC Cadet and Jon Birdsong. If you are looking to start the next $300 million business in Atlanta, check out the studio at atlantaventures.com and the companies we work with who've done it before. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it at your next coffee meeting or dinner greeting, rate it, and write a benevolent, eloquent review.